A polyglot is a book that contains side-by-side versions of the same text in several different languages. Some editions of the Bible or its parts are polyglots, in which the Hebrew and Greek originals are exhibited along with historical translations. Polyglots are useful for studying the history of the text and its interpretation. Origen's hexapla. The first enterprise of this kind is the famous hexapla of Origen of Alexandria, in which the Old Testament scriptures were written in 6 parallel columns, the first containing the Hebrew text, the second a transliteration of this in Greek letters, the third and fourth are Greek translations by Aquila of Sinope and by Symmachus the Ebionite, the fifth a Septuagint version as revised by Origen, and the sixth a translation by Theodotion. However, as only 2 languages, Hebrew and Greek, were employed, the work should perhaps be called a diglot rather than a polyglot in the usual sense. Printed polyglots. After the invention of printing and the revival of philological studies, polyglots became a favorite means of advancing the knowledge of Middle Eastern languages, for which no good references were available, as well as from the study of scripture. Complutensian polyglot. The series began with the Complutensian printed by Axnaldus Guilhelmus de Brocario at the expense of Cardinal Ximenes at the University at Alcalá de Henares. The first volume of this, containing the New Testament in Greek and Latin, was completed on January 10, 1514. In vols. E-V, the Hebrew text of the Old Testament was printed in the first column of each page, followed by the Latin Vulgate and then by the Septuagint version with an interlinear Latin translation. Below these stood the Chaldee, again with a Latin translation. The 6th volume, containing an appendix, is dated 1515, but the work did not receive the papal sanction until March 1520, and was apparently not issued until 1522. The chief editors were Juan de Vergara, López de Zúñiga, Hernán Núñez, Antonio de Nebria, and Demetrius Ducas. Antwerp Polyglot. About half a century after the Complutensian came the Antwerp Polyglot, printed by Christopher Plantin. The principal editor was Arius Montanus, aided by Guido Fabricius Boderianus, Raphaelengus, Macius Lucas of Bruges, and others. This work was under the patronage of Philip II of Spain. It added a new language to those of the Complutensian by including the Syriac New Testament, and, while the earlier polyglot had only the Targum of Onkelos on the Pentateuch, the Antwerp Bible had also the Targum on the Prophets, and on Esther, Job, Psalms, and the Solomonic writings. Paris Polyglot. Next came Guy Michel Leger's Paris Polyglot, which embraces the first printed texts of the Syriac Old Testament and of the Samaritan Pentateuchan version by Jean Morin. It has also an Arabic version, or rather a series of various Arabic versions. London Polyglot. The last great polyglot is Brian Walton's, which is much less beautiful than Leger's but more complete in various ways, including, among other things, the Syriac of Esther and of several apocryphal books for which it is wanting in the Paris Bible, Persian versions of the Pentateuch and Gospels, and the Psalms and New Testament in Ethiopic. Walton was aided by able scholars and used much new manuscript material. His prolegomena and collections of various readings mark an important advance in biblical criticism. It was in connection with this polyglot that Edmund Castell produced his famous heptaglot lexicon, a monument of industry and erudition even when allowance is made for the fact that for the Arabic he had the great manuscript lexicon compiled and left to the University of Cambridge by William Bedwell. The liberality of Cardinal Ximenes, who is said to have spent 500,000 ducats on it, removed the Complutensian polyglot from the risks of commerce. The other three editions all brought the promoters to the verge of ruin. Subsequent polyglots are of little scholarly importance, the best recent texts having been confined to a single language, but at least into the early 20th century many biblical students still used Walton, and, if it was available, Genoa Psalter. The numerous polyglot editions of parts of the Bible include the Genoa Psalter of 1516, edited by Agostino Giustiniani, Bishop of Nebbio. This is in Hebrew, Latin, Greek, Aramaic, and Arabic, and is interesting from the character of the Chaldee text, being the first specimen of Western printing in the Arabic writing system, and from a curious note on Christopher Columbus and the discovery of America on the margin of some XIX.